Right, welcome to my channel. As I'm sure you've realized from the title of this video, today we are looking at the DRO that I'm planning to install on the little Boxford lathe. Main reason being it's an imperial lathe and I'm not a big fan of working in imperial. Plus the Z-axis doesn't have any kind of scale on it, so unless you're using the compound you don't really know where you are. And I'm not a big fan of the compound, so I don't plan to be using it. So yeah, it really needs a DRO on it. I bought a couple of bits from AliExpress. I'll show you those in a minute. First, let's just take a look at the lathe and I'll show you what my plan is. Right, so there's the little lathe. I've put a three-phase motor on it. It came with a three-phase, but it wasn't a dual voltage type. So I've had to replace it with a dual voltage three-phase motor because obviously it's my home garage. I don't have three-phase. So that's running off of this inverter. It's a 0.75 horsepower motor and a 1 horsepower inverter. Looks quite busy in that box. Used to be an Apple computer case, but yeah, it looks pretty busy in there, only because I've got 12 volt for the fans, 24 volt because that contactor wants 24 volt. There's also a filter behind the inverter there. And inside this part here, there's actually a braking resistor, and I've also installed a thermal cutout. So there's quite a lot going on. The contactor is wired to the e-stop, so you just need to release the e-stop to enable the inverter. And then I've got this little control panel here that should be mounted on the front, just with a forward, reverse, and spindle speed. And that feeds that three-phase motor. I had to take a bit of stock off the top of that electrical housing just so I get enough clearance for the belts. These are new belts, and to be honest, I regret buying these linked belts as much as it's a pain to change this belt, because you have to actually take the spindle out and this shaft has to come out so you can get it round the pulleys. But I think I would actually prefer to go through with that pain in the arse just to get rid of the link belt, because it's not very good, the link belt. It does make it easier because you can split it and rejoin it, but I've had to make it so tight just to reduce the amount of belt slip that I've been having. And I think it's because the profile isn't a very good fit with the pulleys. I think a standard V-belt, a section V-belt will be a better fit and grip much better. So as a result, I'm having to tension this a lot. And even then, I'm still getting a little bit of belt slip when you put any torque on it. So yeah, so this is the lathe. Obviously, we're going to want to put the Z-axis scale back here. And then I have seen people put a glass scale over here as well for the cross slide. I'd like to try and avoid that by fitting the cross slide scale underneath, so I'll have to use a magnetic scale for that. So so that it's out of the way, I'll make some kind of extension onto the back of the cross slide just to house the magnetic strip, and the sensor can then sit underneath that. But that'll be much tidier, I think. I have seen people fit a glass scale over here, and then you run the risk of smacking the tailstock into it, and you're also reducing your access to your tailstock. So I'm not a big fan of that system. Also, you can't then get to your gib adjustment screws, so I'd like to avoid that if possible. So my thinking is, underneath here we put a magnetic scale, and then it'll be quite tidy, and hopefully when we're all the way over this side, it'll still clear the guard that's not installed at the moment that lives over here. So there should be enough space, I think. So that's the plan. And to that end, I went onto AliExpress and I bought a couple of bits, and I'll show them to you now. Right, so this is our readout. As I said, aliexpress.com. We'll go through the contents of the box quickly. So that is the readout. Bog standard, 2-axis. Not much to say about that really, very light. On the back you've got your connections, mounting bracket, power, switch and an earth. And then on the front you've got your standard sort of DRO stuff. That was £34.16 including shipping and tax. And I purchased all of these parts separately rather than buying a kit, because I noticed a lot of the kits, well, all of the kits I could find came with either glass scales or a magnetic tape, and there were none that came with where you could choose which type of encoder you wanted or scale. So because I want a glass scale for the Z and a magnetic strip for the X, I had to buy all the bits separately, but I don't think it really ended up costing that much more. The rest of the stuff that is included is a dodgy looking foreign plug, standard kettle lead, so easy to replace, and then obviously the arm and mounting bracket, and then a little clear plastic cover, I'm assuming to try and keep coolant off, and some screws and attachment bits, and the bracketry I believe that is meant to fit in this part over there. So pretty simple. I think it's fairly good value for £34.16. I noticed AliExpress are quite sneaky. If you Google something and then you bring up the shopping tab and it shows you all the prices of stuff, the prices you see are not the same as the prices you get when you actually go on to AliExpress. They give you sort of teaser prices that aren't real. So once you go into the app, you know, the prices are different. I think most are around £150 to £200 for a DRO kit with 2 or 3 axes worth of glass scales, etc., etc. Whereas buying the components separately, it did actually seem to work out a similar or even lower price. So as I said, £34.16 for the readout. And then we also have the magnetic scale. This is for the cross slide. So this one actually comes with instructions, which is quite handy. Incidentally, the DRO also came with instructions. So this scale was £40.86. And that's the reed head with its pre-wired, I think that's a DB9 connector. Comes with these little rubber wipers and some mounting screws as well, and a proper shielded and cable, steel braided cable, so or not braided, but steel cable, so looks like stainless steel. Looks like something decent, not going to easily get pinched or damaged, I hope. So pretty good, I think. And a mounting bracket for the reed head, and then 1 meter of magnetic tape and stainless steel cover strip. So these are both attached using 3M double-sided adhesive. Whether it's really 3M or just says 3M, I don't know, but there's a meter of the stuff here. You can cut this to any length. This was the cheapest setup I could get. The 1 meter was the shortest length you could get. But yeah, it's plenty. I only need about 200 mils, so I'll have spares in case I need it. So yeah, I think it was fairly good value. And as I said, that was £40.86, including shipping and VAT. I've noticed on AliExpress they do charge VAT, and then I'm assuming the VAT gets paid to customs when it lands in the UK. Anyway, this and the DRO, they both took about 5 days from China, which isn't too bad, I think. And then the third piece of the puzzle is the glass scale. Now, this took a lot longer. This took about 3 weeks to arrive, and it came in a terrible state. The box has got holes in it. I've taped it back together, but both ends were actually open. So I had my doubts about whether this would still be functional, but turned out everything was okay. So that comes with a mounting bracket for the reader head, the glass scale itself. So I went with a 600mm, and it doesn't look too bad, to be honest. There's plenty of length on the also reinforced steel cable with I think a DB9 connector. There's a double layer of rubber sealing in here to keep out any muck. Plus, obviously, if you're mounting it upside down and you use the included shield, I think you should be pretty confident you're not going to get a load of crap in there. As I said, the box was destroyed and I had my doubts, but I tested it and everything's fine. It's not broken. It displays correctly on the DRO. So, yeah, I mean, I suspect it was meant to come with some screws, but they probably went AWOL since the box is actually open on both ends. So I suspect they just disappeared. So I'll have to source some screws. In this bracket, it's punched and it's terrible. I've run a deburring tool over it to try and get rid of some of the worst of the grotty burrs on things, but these are meant for M5 and they measure 7, so not brilliant. I might replace that with something a bit more fitting. I wouldn't like to put a M5 screw in a 7mm slot. It's just goes against my religion. So I'll probably do something about that. Either that or I'll turn some bushes or something to go in there, because that's terrible. But better now that it's been deburred with a file and a deburring tool. So yeah, so that was £37.12 for the glass scale. So the glass scale was £2, £3 less expensive than the magnetic scale. I've read that the magnetic scales are generally more expensive, but it wasn't by a lot. So what was the total? £112 and 14 pence. So £112 and 14 pence for the whole lot, including shipping and VAT and everything. So that's as landed in the UK. In future, I think if I'm buying another glass scale, I'll pay more careful attention to what their shipping practices are, because, as I said, it took 3 weeks, but I've been having a lot of success with AliExpress at the moment. They've really got their shipping game under control, and if you are careful what you purchase, you can get stuff from China in 5 days now, and it's fully tracked all the way. And I recently had to return that tool post that I bought that you might see in a previous video, and the return went smooth as clockwork. It took 3 days for them to refund me for that, and there was no quibbles at all. So, and the return was free. I didn't pay for return shipping. So, yeah, really happy with what's coming out of AliExpress at the moment. So yeah, so that's the basic building blocks we're working with here. I think next time we chat, I'm going to put the plug it all in and demonstrate that it actually works. In fact, we can probably just do that right now. See if I can find a plug. Right, so I'm back. Hopefully this isn't one of the multitude of kettle style cables I've got lying around with blown fuses in. Let's have a look. Well, that power's on fine. So we'll plug both of these in. You have to be careful with this tape. It goes sproing the minute you let it go. So that is the tape. Oh, love a messy bench. So that's the tape with the stainless steel cover on top, and that has been plugged in. And then this is our glass scale. So let's switch on. And we'll move the scale, and clearly you can see we've got movement there. It seems to be registering movement perfectly. Right, so we know that's working. And then if we run our reader head over the magnetic tape, there you can see we're seeing movement there too, into positive and negative. So clearly the magnetic tape is working. It works from quite a distance away. It looks like I can get sort of 2 millimeters away, right down to actually making contact. So it does seem to read very, very well and very predictably and reliably, even through the stainless steel cover. So as you can see, it's all working quite well. Really happy with that. Let's just switch this off. Right. Yeah, so very happy with that. As I said before, I've been having a lot of success with AliExpress lately. I've bought a bunch of stuff from there. Something else I bought from AliExpress was a little centre. So Morse taper 2 running centre. Works great. I think this was £6 with shipping. I mean, you can't really go wrong, can you? As long as you don't mind waiting. And the thing is, these days, you're not even waiting for that long. It's 4 or 5 days from China. So I've been pleasantly surprised when things have turned up pretty much every single time I've ordered from AliExpress lately. So really liking what you can get out of there. And for a total of, I wrote this down, total of, not on there, a total of £112.14, including shipping and taxes and everything. That's landed in the UK in 5 days for most of these bits. I think that's pretty good. If this all works, and I have no reason to believe it won't, but if this all works really well when actually mounted to the machine, that's a really nice upgrade for very little money. So, yeah, next thing to do is to start with one of the axes. I haven't decided which one yet. Probably it's going to be, I think the x-axis, the cross slide, because that's going to need modification. In fact, well, let's take a look at that quickly before we go any further. Right, so this is our cross slide. Let's get this gib out first. So when you look at that, I'm thinking we're going to be on that side because the gap between the edge of the nut and the start of the dovetail is a bit wider on that side. So if we put a slot in there all the way up the top, and then we extend the back a little bit and continue the slot onto there, that'll give us a good 250, 280 length in which we can have our magnetic strips. So just as a rough guide, that would fit in there. So if I slot that, then I think that would fit there quite well, actually. If we do it on this side, because it's the side furthest from the chuck for a start, so it's less likely to get swarf in there, but also because without the gib in place, there's a little bit more space to work with inside that area. I think if we just touch on here and slot into there and slot into the extension part once it's been attached, then we'll have a nice clean surface for a nice consistent gap between that and the reader, and we can hide the whole thing under here. I think that'll be really convenient. So this is by far the more complex of the two axes that we're going to have to do. The Z-axis, obviously, it's just mounted at the back of the lathe bed, so it's a fairly easy, I think. So this one, I think, is more complex. I just need to have a think about which one is going to determine what the location points are for the reader heads. So obviously both reading heads are mounted to the carriage. It's just a case of deciding which one's easier to position and which one's going to be dependent on the other one, if you know what I mean, when it comes to bracketry and arranging things. So I think I might start actually with the easier of the two and do the Z-axis first, come back to this one. Once I've mounted the Z-axis, mounted the reading head, and I know what the bracketry looks like for that, and I can work this out to fit in with that. I think that might be the easiest. But it's definitely, I think this is definitely feasible. Having that sit underneath there, it's only about, let's have a measure of that, see how thick that is. So that's about 2 mil. Bearing in mind we've still got the backing for the double-sided tape, and there's 2 layers of double-sided tape on that. One on the stainless steel cover, one on the magnetic strip itself. So probably about 2 mil, which means, what's that height? So that's about 1.8. So with any luck, this is relatively flat compared to that. And all I have to do is touch the top of that face there to get a 2 mil depth there and a 2 mil depth on whatever piece I put there, and everything will just sit inside there easily, and the whole thing will go nice and smooth. And then once the tape's in there, the magnetic tape, I can just refit the gib, and because the gib rests on the inside, on the outer edge of the dovetail there will still be material to locate the gib correctly, because you want it to pull up against that corner. So I think that's going to work fine, actually, and that'll be a really tidy way of doing it. So I think we're a goer on that. So next thing to do is to look at how we're going to fit that to the bed. Right, so now we have some direction. I'm going to get this thing started, but it won't be on this episode, unfortunately. Today we're just looking at the breakdown of the parts, where they came from, what they cost, make sure they work, and get a rough idea of how we're going to put this all together. So this is going to be a multi-part series, because unfortunately I have to fit this in between so many other things, but I'll try and get to that soon. And get this thing kicked off, because I really would like to sell my old lathe, and I can't do it until my new lathe is up and running. So, and it's taking up space in the garage, which, although is quite a fair sized garage, it's, you know, there's always something that hasn't got a home. So I'd like to get rid of the old lathe. I'd like to get the new lathe up and running properly, and so hopefully we can get to this soon. But please be patient, and hopefully see you again soon. Thank you very much for watching.